Welcome, Angry Faithful. Today on Psycho and Sociopaths, we're going to talk about Delphine LaLaurie. But her first name...
Yeah, Marie Delphine
McCarthy.
McCarthy.
That's her actual first maiden name.
She became...
But she has
after her third marriage is when she became Madame LaLaurie.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that...
And let's not make any jokes about people who have been married 3 times, because I'm about to do that. See, you're not the only one that can set themselves up for a joke.
Yeah,
but I had to do it intentionally, whereas yours...
Mine would probably be the whole fact, because we still got to write a couple of scripts for TikTok. But she was born during the Spanish colonization period, and she was married 3 times in Louisiana. That's where she mostly lived. She maintained her position in New Orleans socialite until April 10th, 1834, when rescuers respond to a fire at her Royal Street mansion, which is still there.
Yeah.
Or they redid it, I think.
I'm sure.
They discovered bound slaves, and this is the time frame where it was the South and we did have slaves. So
yeah.
They discovered bound slaves in her attic who showed evidence of cruel, violent abuse over a long period. Laura Lee house was subsequently sacked by an outraged mob in New Orleans by the New Orleans citizens. She escaped to France with her family. The mansion, traditionally held to be Laurie's, is landmarked in the French Quarter, and is in part because it's historically and archaeologically. Man, I can't freaking say that word. Architecturally significance. There we go. I did it. It's called the Laura Lee. Huh?
It doesn't have a Lee on it, so it wouldn't be Archicol. It'd be Archicol and Archicoli.
Oh. See, even my daughter has to correct me. That's what's really sad about my dyslexia.
Well, then she needs to grab a cushion, and she needs to get in the frame.
Hey, you wanna do it with us?
I mean, I'm just gonna search it up for you.
She can sit in and do it on camera.
Yeah, you can do it with us. There we go.
Anyways, can you hand me the thing so I can search it up how to say it?
I can hear you just fine, but she can't hear me because I'm in your headset.
Yeah. Because if I don't do it, I could have gotten. But it's the address is actually 1140 Royal Street and was in fact rebuilt after the departure from her departure from New Orleans. So her early life, she was born on March 19th, 1787, as one of the 5 children. Her father was Louis Bartholomew. God, man, these words. Architectural. There we go.
Architectural. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's? I'm just gonna say her father. Brought the family to New Orleans from Ireland around 1730. During the French colony period. Her mother was Marie Jeannette Laurable. That's literally more. Look that one up. Laura. Here, let me just do it this way. This is our what do you call it? Pro stuff. This is how pro we are.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get my child to help me out with words.
Well,
It's one of
sometimes
those.
you need help.
It's one of those things. Mora, I want you podcast. Okay. I need you to read me words.
See, I was pronouncing her name with an English accent and was just saying Moira.
Yeah,
It sounds a bit more sophisticated than that.
Hate that I have that as the thing.
Yeah, it's you know what's really sad? A friend of mine had to tell me how to pronounce I was going Mora. Like O-R-A. He's like, no, it's Mara. I was like, oh, I don't even know I know how to spell it. I don't know how to pronounce my own daughter's name. Which is sad.
Look, I've been saying it the same way.
Yeah. That's only because I was doing it. But
I mean, at least you didn't name her Dashiki or LaFonda or
this is true.
Just
What is it?
saying.
Laurable.
Oh, people.
That's weird.
What?
Laurable.
Laurable?
Yeah. I just can't wait. You know what? You know one thing though is I can't wait is when go to the
Oh yeah, her mother's maiden name? Yeah, also known as the Widow Le Comé. As her marriage to Louis B. McCarty was her second. Both of Delphine's parents were prominent in the town's European Creole community. Her uncle by marriage, Esteban Rodriguez Mairo, was governor to the Spanish-American provinces of Louisiana and Florida during 1785 to 1791, and her cousin, Augustine de McCarthy, was mayor of New Orleans from 1815 to 1820. She was only 4 years old when the Haitian Revolution erupted in 1791, something that made slaveholders in the southern United States and the Caribbean very afraid of resistance and rebellion among slaves. Her uncle had been murdered in 1771 by his own slaves, and the revolution had inspired the local Migne conspiracy in 1791, and the Pont Copiac conspiracy in 1794, and the German Coast Uprising in 1811, all of which caused many slaveholders to discipline slaves even more harshly out of fear of insurrection.
So it just escalated the bullshit.
Yeah, it just kept escalating. I mean, one revolution after another, one uprising after another.
Well, the first marriage on June 11th, 1800, at the ripe old age of 13. See, you're an old widow back then.
You'd be a spinster right now.
Yeah, you'd be a spinster. You'd be a Spencer back then.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'd be skewered at this point. I'm gay.
Yeah, they didn't really like that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'd have to keep that stuff on the down low, and you would probably be working in a library somewhere.
Stoned to death, not skewered.
Yeah, you'd probably be stoned to death, or no, you'd probably be burnt to a stake.
Yeah, burned at the stake.
Yeah, they did that with witches.
The proper thing in the Bible was getting stoned to death for being gay.
These are Creole. They are not proper by the Bible.
Yeah. But at age 13, Delphine married Don Romero de Lopez y Aguilo. Angulo. A royal Spanish officer, because I'm not doing that whole Spanish thing.
Don Ramon de Lopez let me start over. Don Ramon de Lopez y Angelo. There we go.
I was gonna say the royal.
At some point, Maria is going to come back and correct us anyway. So
yeah, I was on the same page on that one. I was like, Maria's gonna have to say something about that one.
She's probably over there dying. She's like, "Oh, isn't that cute? They're trying to pronounce things in Spanish."
Yeah, I can say burrito.
I can say nacho supreme. Oh, I can say churro. I can say, I can say chicharrones.
Tacos.
El carbón. Yeah.
Cerveza.
De polo. Cerveza.
tortilla either. Or quesadilla.
But he was the royal officer.
He probably says jalapeno.
Jalapeno.
She's trying to do the math in that one. She looked up. She's like, "What?" And then you saw the gears turning for a second. All right. Anyways.
Yeah, I saw the gears turning a little bit. But he was a Spanish officer at the St. Louis Cardinal in New Orleans, as it was spelled in. Oh wow, Louisiana, as it was spelled in Spanish, had become a Spanish colony in 1760 after the French was defeated in the 7-Year War.
7 years.
In 1804, after the American acquisition of what was then, I had to do it slowly more. No fun. Don Ramon had been appointed a position of general for Spain and the territories in Louisiana, and was called to appear at the court of Spain while en route to Madrid with Delphine, who was then pregnant with Don Ramon's suddenly then pregnant. Okay, God.
Yeah, okay. So while en route to Madrid with Delphine, who was then pregnant, Don Ramon suddenly died in Havana. A few days later, after his death, Delphine gave birth to his daughter, Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angelo de la Candelaria. Yeah, nicknamed Borquita. The widowed Delphine and her child returned to New Orleans.
Yep. And the okay. Let me look at the. Let me look at. Okay, she was married at age 13. I'm trying to. Okay, the first marriage at 13. So she was 17 when her husband died, and she remarried
4 years later.
No. Yeah, you're right. 4 years later, she married 4 years later, so she was like 23. Jean Black Banquick. God, I hate Blanquick. A prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, that's the thing. Legislator. That's the thing back then. It's really weird. Is the people that, if you go back in that time frame, the actual like congressmen and senators from back that time frame, they only met in the Capitol for very few times because they had to run their farm half the time. That was a thing back then. Now that's career politician, to where they basically the only time.
Well, that's the way that it used to be. It used to be because the states would pick their representatives, and the representatives would then go to Washington. Okay, somewhere along the lines, or somewhere along the way, the politicians revamped the rule. They passed some kind of legislation that said, we want to, we don't want to have any term limits, because it used to be that they could be there for 2 terms and then they had to return to civilian life.
Yeah. Well, most
and that's
of
why
them
they were called
return.
representatives, because they were sent as representatives of their states.
Yeah.
And then it got all cockeyed and backwards and jacked up. And
well, most of the representatives didn't want to stay long anyways. Yeah. Because they rather work on their farm, their livelihood, and their family. Of course, back then they didn't have the fast travel that we do now.
Well, still, I mean, a lot of them were either farmers, a lot of them were industrialists, or some of them were doctors. And to a degree, there are some lawmakers that have gone to Washington that during their recess periods, they'll still practice medicine back in their home districts.
Yeah,
just to keep their medical licenses good.
Well, I think it was who was it? damn, I can't remember her name. But she was trying to become president in the Democratic Party. The Navy officer. God, I can't remember her
I don't
name.
remember.
But
Don't much keep up with the Democrats for obvious reasons. So. It's like
he ended up purchasing the house at 409 Royal Street in New Orleans for the family, which became known as Villa Vasquez. Dude, I got it right. Vasquez. Delphine had had 4 children by Vasquez, named Marie, Louis, Marie. God, Lou. How do you name your kid the exact same name, but just at the end, the third name, you name it like, oh, we're gonna do your last name different. What am I gonna go by?
Actually, the middle one has the first one's flipped.
That is true. There's only like one of them that's original. Yeah, there's only.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, there's only like
Jean-Pierre
one.
Paulin Blanc.
There's only one that's kind of original.
Same last name. They just have 2 middle names.
Still.
Well, they had 4 names.
Yeah.
So,
but
except for poor. Well, no, yeah, they had 4 names. They had the surname. You had your first name, and then your first name with the French names. Their first name usually comes in 2 parts. You know, like you had Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah, but European names, and they've been doing that for eons, to where they'll give like 15 different freaking names. And from what I was told, they take the maiden name of the mother and they give that to them too, and it's just to remember the whole family line.
Right.
Can you imagine calling for one of the Maries?
Oh no, I had to do that. When I was in corrections. This guy had a long name. And it literally it didn't fit on his ID card. I was like, what the hell? But on his mail that he would get, it would be like fully on there. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing this whole name. Oh, it's mine. That's all it was. But he ended up dying in 1816. So,
long 8 years.
Huh?
Long 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, 4 kids, 8 years. Kid every 2 years.
9 years after that.
She bred well in captivity, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
A long gap after marriage.
Yeah.
It takes a while after the crazy.
But on the third marriage, on June 25th, 1825, Delphine married her third husband, a physician, Leonard Louis Nico. Damn, fucking 15 names. Who is much younger than her. In 1831, she bought property at 1140 Royal Street, which is the murder house, which she managed in her own name, with little involvement of her husband. In 1832, she had a 2-story mansion built there, complete with attachment slave quarters. She lived there with her third husband and two of her daughters, and maintained a central position in New Orleans society. See, this is a thing. The weird thing that I've always hated was the socialites ideal.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually have it in town. There's the red hat girls or women, or red hat grandmothers, or some shit like that.
Redheaded grandmothers.
No, red hat.
Yeah, I know what you meant. You had it right the first time. I was just like redheaded grandmothers. That's hilarious.
Yeah, but they do a lot of charity work, so it's nothing like really bad. But I've never met them. I know they meet sometimes up at a what do you call it? That egg place over by the mall.
Mm-hmm.
They eat there for breakfast sometimes. Marriage soon showed signs of strain. However, on November 16th, 1832, Dauphine petitioned the first district court for separation from bed and board of her husband. That's what they called it. Yeah, separation from bed and board.
Yeah.
Delphine claimed that she had been treated her in such a manner as to render their living together unsupportable. Claims which her son and two her daughters by Jean confirmed. The separation does not seem to have been permanent, as the doctor was present at the Royal Street House in April 10th, 1834, the day of the fire. Now we get to the good stuff, the really weird stuff.
The bird.
Now, a lot of people that actually visited our political correspondent that we don't use that much because he's still doing his thing. He said he was over there and there's a lot of ghosts still there.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Yeah. But the treatment of her slaves between 1831 to 1834 are mixed. Harriet Manitou, writing in 1838, and recounts tales told by her by New Orleans residents during her 1836 visits, claimed enslaved people of Lorraine were observed to be singular haggard and wretched. However, what is haggard and wretched? Look that up. I know what wretched means, but I never heard of haggard. However,
Okay, nothing. Go ahead.
How
Exhausted and unwell, especially from fatigue, worry, or suffering.
Okay.
I doubt it's the second one. Of a hawk caught for training as a wild adult for more than 12 months.
Caught for training a wild adult of more than 12. Huh, weird. It's two separate meanings. It's what's really weird. But, however, in public appearance, Lauren was seen to be gently polite to Black people, and she was concerned of the slave health of her slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Funeral registries between 1830 to 1834 documented the death of 12 enslaved people at the Royal Street Mansion, although the cause of death were not mentioned. And infectious disease could easily have been the cause. Those 12 deaths included Boney, a cook and laundress, and her 4 children.
Mm-hmm.
Had previously been slaves by a refuge from St. Dominguez, and was described in her cell as a chronic runaway. Okay. With the influx of white and free St. Dominguez refugees of color and those whom they had enslaved, the fear of enslaved people from St. Dominguez still lingered in Louisiana. But we'll talk about the fire, because back then with the slavery and how they were actually treated, it wasn't uncommon for that.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, people of that were considered slaves, and this is slaves from any kind of oppression. They were property. to the point to where if it broke down, most of the time they just go buy another new one. Or if it ran away, as these do, they would. I mean, even the horses, they would shoot. They wouldn't shoot a horse, but they'll shoot a slave or mangle. On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the residence on Royal Street, starting in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshal got there, they found the cook, a 70-year-old woman, chained to the stove by her ankle. She later said that she had set the fire as a suicide attempt because she feared being punished, which that happened a lot too.
Yeah.
As she said that enslaved people took into the uppermost room never came back. So it was basically that was the torture room.
Right.
As reported in the New York Bee of 1834, bystanders responded to the fire, attempted to enter the quarters of those enslaved to ensure that everyone had been evacuated. Upon being refused the keys by the Lorelines, the bystanders broke down the doors to the quarters and found 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs amputated, stretched, and torn from one extremities to the other. Apparently stretched and torn from one extremities to the other, who claimed to have been imprisoned there for some months.
Yeah. One of those who entered the premises was Judge Jean-Francois Canoguy. Canoguy, that's what I'm going to go with, who subsequently deposed to having found the LaRue mansion, among others, a negress wearing a black female, wearing an iron collar, and an old Negro woman who had received a very deep wound on her head, who was too weak to be able to walk. He said that when he questioned her husband about these enslaved on the property, he was told in an insolent manner that some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's business. A version of this story circulating in 1836, recounted by Martineau, added that the enslaved people were emaciated. No, not emasculated, emaciated, which means they were starved.
Okay.
Showed signs of being flayed with a whip, were bound with restrictive postures, and wore spiked iron collars, which kept their heads in static positions. When the discovery of the abused enslaved people became widely known, a mob of local citizens attacked the residence, demolished and destroyed everything that they could lay their hands on. A sheriff and his officers were called upon to disperse the crowd, but by the time the mob left, the property had sustained major damage, with scarcely anything remaining but the walls. The slaves were taken to a local jail where they were available for public viewing. The Bee reported that by April 12th, up to 4,000 people had attended to view the enslaved people to convince themselves of their suffering. The Pittsfield Sun, citing the New Orleans Advertiser, and writing several weeks later after the evacuation of LaLaurie quarters of enslaved people, claimed that 2 of the enslaved people were found in the mansion had died since their rescue. It added, "We understand that in digging the yard, bodies have been disinterred and the condemned well in the grounds of the mansion had been uncovered. Others, particularly that of a child, were found." These claims were repeated by Martineau in her 1838 book, Retrospect of Western Travel, where she placed the number of unearthed bodies at 2, including the child Leah. Now, Laurie did it. She escaped. After her life after the 1834 fire is not well documented. Martineau wrote in 1838 that LaLaurie fled New Orleans during the mob violence that followed the fire, taking a coach to the waterfront and traveling by schooner to Mobile, Alabama, and then to Paris. By the time Mortenu personally visited the Royal Street Mansion in 1836, it was still unoccupied and badly damaged, with gaping windows and empty walls. But
living with his
yeah,
mother and two sisters, Pauline and Laurie, in exile in Paris, Delphine's son, Paulin, wrote on August 15th, 1842, and his brother-in-law, Augustin Delos, stated that Delphine was serious about returning to New Orleans and had thought about doing so for a long time. Baskin wrote in the same letter that he believed that his mother never had any idea about the reason for her departure from New Orleans. Despite Delphine's bad mood and her determination to return to New Orleans, the disapproval of her children and other relatives had apparently been enough for her to cancel her plans. It kind of sounds like she had dementia after a while.
yeah, it's possible. I mean, with everything that was going on, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
The circumstances of Laureline's death are also unclear. In 1888, George Washington Cable recounts a popular but unsubstantiated story that
hold on. Subsequent
story that Laureline had died in France in a boar hunting accident in the late 1930s. Wow. She was about 100 years old. No, she was more than 100 years old.
A long life to live.
How long does it say that she? Because it.
Let me see. The circumstances of LaLaurie's death are also unclear. In 1888, George Washington Cable recounted a popular but unsubstantiated story that LaLaurie had died in France in a boar hunting accident in the late 1930s. Like you just said, Eugene Backus, who served as sexton to the St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 until 1924, discovered an old cracked copper plate in Alley 4 of the cemetery. The inscription on the plate read, Madame LaLaurie, née Marie Delphine McCarthy, décédée à Paris le 7 décembre 1842. Il a l'âge de 6. The English translation of the inscription reads, Madame LaLaurie, born Marie Delphine McCarthy, died in Paris December 7th, 1842, at the age of 55. According to the French archives of Paris, however, LaLaurie died on 7 December 1849 at the age of 62.
That's how old she was when she died.
Yeah, she was 62. That's speculation, though.
Oh, speculation. 143.
Well,
so the original New Orleans mansion occupied LaLaurie did not survive. The impressive mansion at 1140 Royal Street on the corner of Governor Nichols Street, formerly known as Hospital Street, commonly referred to as the LaLaurie or Haunted House, is not the same building inhabited by LaLaurie. When she acquired the property in 1831 from Edmond Seigneur de Fasson, a house was already under construction and finished for LaLaurie. The house was burned by the mob in 1834, remained in a ruined state for at least another 4 years, then it was rebuilt by Paris Tétestur after 1838 and assumed the appearance that it has today. Over the following decades, it's been used as a public high school, a conservatory of music, and an apartment building, a refuge for young delinquents, a bar, a furniture store, and a luxury apartment building. The dwelling has a third floor and rear building added later in the 19th century, and the rear building on Governor's Nichols Street, which had only had one floor until the second one was added in the 20th century and remodeled in the 1970s, when the second floor interior of the building was done over by Koch and Wilson architects. At 3 stories high, it was described in 1928 as the highest building for squares around. With the result of that, from the cupola of on the roof, one may look out over the Vincari and see the Mississippi in its crescent before Jackson Square. The entrance to the building bears iron grill work, and the door is carved with an image of Phoebus, Phobos, Phoebus, Phoebus in his chariot, with wreaths of flowers and depending garlands and bas relief. Inside the vestibule is floored in black and white marble, and with a curved mahogany rail staircase runs the full 3 stories of the building. The second floor holds 3 large drawing rooms connected by ornamented sliding doors, whose walls are decorated with plaster rosettes, carved woodwork, black marble mantelpieces, and fluted pilasters.
Apparently apparently in 2007, Nicolas Cage bought the house for $3.45 million. To protect actors' privacy, the mortgage documents were arranged in such a way that Cage's name did not appear on them. On November 13th of 2009, the property, then valued at $3.5 million, was listed for auction as a result of foreclosure and the purchase by Regionals Financial Corp. And for $2.3 million. That's because he didn't pay his taxes.
Yeah.
But the folklore on all this stuff of the abuse and murder of those enslaved on the property circulated in New Orleans during the 19th century and were reprinted in collections of stories by Henry Castanos and George Washington Cables. Cables accounted, not to confuse with the unrelated 1881 novel Madame Delphine, was based on the contemporary reports in newspapers such as New Orleans Bee, and the Advertiser. And upon 1838 accounts, the retrospect of Western Travels, he added some of his own synapses, dialogue, and speculations on it. But it's talking about this. Oh, wow. That is a human calico. Victims obviously had her. There was to the discoveries allegedly made by rescuers during the 1834 fire, including a victim who obviously had her arms amputated, her skin peeled off in a circular pattern, making her look more like a human centipede caterpillar, and another who had her limbs broken and reset at odd angles to resemble a human crab. Wow. Wow. I mean, wow. So this bitch was crazy. So, wow. That's some weird stuff on that one.
Yeah, she a little out there.
Yeah. Which is really strange is I was like, this, hey, Moore, do this for me. She was born in 1787.
17.
No, calculator it up.
Yeah.
Because what I'm curious about right now, because most of the women that actually do start out to be serial killers, most of the time it's like 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So 1787. And minus that 1834. Actually, 1832. Yeah, she was 45. So it makes perfect sense. Man, no, every female serial killer we have actually talked about here recently, the men, it's totally different. It's at a young age. You can find out in a young age. But about 40 or 45, when a woman goes through menopause, their bodies really fucked off and change.
Yeah, it does happen.
So
Until I get there.
So I hope I end up fucking great by then.
I just come over.
Well, man, by the time, with the way that medical advances are supposed to be going in this country, hell, in this world, by the time it gets to where you and I get to that age where our kids and grandkids start contemplating putting us in a home, half of our bodies may be synthetic, man.
Dude, I want that so bad.
I could see you. You're going to be like, this is just like that game, Shadowrun. I want a deck that's going to allow me to hack into anything.
What is this? Oh, that's cool.
Ow.
Huh. But anyways, that's the end of this episode. We're going to go ahead and start recording. So we're not going to change our shirts, but we're going to start recording for What the Hell, which is going to be on Sunday. We're still going to keep up with the schedule, but we're going to talk about how dangerous the animal kingdom really is.
Okay. Because Honey Badger doesn't give a shit.
Dude, you have no fucking clue. I watched the whole video about it, and it's wow, just wow on some of these things. But thank you for watching Angry Faithful. I'm David Dickerman.
I'm Johnny Skelton.
And this is Psychos and Sociopaths.